Post-harvest losses at 40% is reducing capacity in this country, and it's supporting imports. Supporting imports. That's what it is. Imports are now running at 2.5 to 5 billion for fruits and vegetables into Ghana. This is clearly unsustainable, period. Triangle, that fertile crescent of this country, could drive it. And set yourself ready for the demography, which in that triangle will be huge. What is the point in dragging for the big urban spaces lots and lots of produce across big distances? What we haven't lost sight of is post-harvest losses is not just a technicality. No, it's a threat to your sustainability and growth, and it's a threat to youth unemployment in this country. And it needs head-on collision. No mincing words. The developed world is nowhere near as efficient as they are even today. You go western provinces and you are in the outer nowhere. You literally are. The logistics are very difficult and the rest of it. And so they have got two very contrasting Chinas at the very least. But what they do have is a policy of making sure that those farmers are meeting international standards. And here's why. Because if I take garlic, the top right, in a place called Jining City in Shandong, which is, you can see the line there, and Shandong is where Qingdao is, 80% of the global garlic export trade is provided by that one city. 67% of global ginger is provided by Shandong province, nowhere else. You start looking very hard at this story, and China is specializing in specific areas where they did have smallholders, and they are absolutely pushing the standards through the system ruthlessly in some cases with tomatoes, but not too ruthlessly, just they have very strict standards in others. Now, I put it to you that I've been talking to quite a lot of people in the agricultural trade here, and they want to get into export markets. But then when you say, right, you're going to have to change your standards, you're going to have to change your mindset. Well, it's very simple. If you don't want to get into export markets, then don't even try. But if you do want to get into export markets, you have no choice. You have to change the mindset, you have to change the standards, and if you don't, that's fine. But just don't start crying when the 2.5 billion suddenly becomes 5 billion and suddenly becomes 7 billion. Just don't bleat, because you will have been responsible for your own lack of foreign exchange. Now, I come back to remittances. This is actually far more serious than I think many people in the developing world really know. And it's, as I said earlier, what we're seeing with COVID is the whole of the hospitality sector, the bars, the restaurants, the hotels, the lot, was closed down 100% in Europe. And who were the staff in those environments? People from the developing world. And so they had no ability to send money home at all. So you've already lost what was 4 to 5 times more than any aid you've ever had. Literally. It's something I'm fond of telling people in the developed world, that when they're upset about the aid budget. And I keep saying to them, you keep thinking that we're the only ones who gives money to the developing world. Well, the developing world gives itself 5 times more than the aid budget. And the aid budget always has strings attached. I'll loan you $1 billion, but you've got to spend that $1 billion with me. Because I've got the tractors, I've got the fertilizer, I've got whatever. So it's not absolutely the case that I give you $1 billion, off you go, do what you like. No, that's never been the case. So we have to be very clear. But the problem is that in Ghana, with a collapse in remittances, we've got problems. And we have to face up to those problems. Now, we also have to face up to this. I put this chart together myself the other day, very, very rapidly. So the years are not exact. It just happened that I could get these years only. So it's not a neat system. The story of this is very, very simple. In 1985, 48% of GDP in this country was generated by agriculture. By 2020, 49% is generated by services. So you've now got a service economy. But a service economy is danger signal, because actually it tends to just work domestically. And you've got a serious problem there, because instead of generating more wealth, you're helping people with the wealth spend it in Ghana. And that's not really going to solve your longer term problems. So we're coming back and back and back to the need for entrepreneurial approach. So we've got a big agenda in the run to 2057. So let's have a look at Agribusiness Ghana. About 3 weeks ago, I was in the railway station in London called King's Cross. Some of you in the room may well have even been in this railway station. Now, I catch trains out of this place quite frequently, and I really like it because there's a sushi takeaway in this railway station. And on this particular occasion, I go and buy, for my daughter and myself, I buy 2 trays of sushi, and I look in there, and as you can see, on the left-hand side, they used to have a plastic tube of wasabi and ginger. And the guy behind the counter, it was late at night, we were catching the last train, was from China. He was at the LSE, an economics student, and I said, hey, hang on a minute, where's my ginger in the box? And he said, oh, well, we charge for that now. And I said, well, you never did, and I've bought here for years. Ah, he said. He said, I'm actually from Shandong in China. I said, yeah, that's where they make the ginger. He said, yeah. And he said they've just had the heaviest rains on record, and now, unfortunately, Shanghai, the port, is totally and utterly collapsed. You can't get anything in, you can't get anything out because of a COVID lockdown. Which means that the ginger market supplied by China, 67% of it is now gone. Finished, at least for the next harvest. But what are we seeing? All of these global phenomena that I'm talking about, we're bouncing. You know, in the chart I showed for the developing world where commodities were bouncing, 1 year very high price, next year very low price. Well, now in the developed world, we're seeing prices do this, just the same. And this is now a huge problem. Now, the other thing, incidentally, now this is shocking. The cost of the ginger, forget all of the small words, I should have removed all of those, but I'll tell you what it says. In the old days, it used to cost to move one container, one 40-foot box from Shanghai to Europe, $1,150 US. It's now averaging $12,000 a time. That's happened in the last year. So now it costs as much to move ginger in a container from Shanghai to Europe as it does to harvest the stuff. So the prices are going north. Now, what does that mean if you import ginger? I'll tell you what it means. It means your import account has just gone up again. So let's look at onions. Well, onions are a really interesting one, and I'll skip past this, but in Agric, they used to have a very sizable onion market, which has been moved. This is in Accra. But the bottom line is you just simply were not meeting the demand in your own country. I bought, for a reason I won't go into, several recipe books of Ghanaian recipe books. And honestly, the number of times that a recipe has onions or tomatoes in it, it's pretty dominant. So onions and tomatoes are in all of your recipes, but you don't even produce enough. The message I want to get across and across and across is let's keep this simple. I'm not talking about high-tech computer systems. I'm talking onions. I'm talking tomatoes. And in onions, Niger, now look at that map. In Africa, a landlocked country, and there are more landlocked economies in Africa than anywhere else on the planet. Landlocked logistics costs can be up to 30 to 40% more expensive than a country with a seaboard. So how is it that we are being beaten in tomatoes and onions by two landlocked countries? And that actually, there's a YouTube video in which a guy in a market in Accra is asked a very simple question. How long does it take to get your onions from Niger to here? He says, without any corruption, a week. Normally, 2 months. And we still can't beat them. We still can't beat them. This is not the Chinese. This is Niger. This is Burkina Faso. Now, this is okra. Now, okra, as you can see on the right, this is from a recipe book. I really think okra is massively underrated in the developed world. And as I said this morning, and to my fellow panelists, one of the shocking things that I've been looking at is that the human species has experience of eating 500 to 600 plants in its entire existence. And today, because of supply chains, where we all know the game of the supply chain is you simplify, you combine, and you eliminate things that do not add value. And today, nine plants out of the 600 actually generate 75% of the calorific intake of the human race. So much for diversity. Because what's happened is the developed world food industry has destroyed diversity. And as I put it this morning, imagine something equivalent to COVID happening with any one of the 9. Well, one just did. Wheat has just been taken off the menu. But what happens if somebody decides to do the reverse of giving good fertilizer and pesticide for all of the rest? It is quite feasible that we could end up with food insecurity, all sorts of issues flying around the lack of diversity of our plants. This is really a serious issue. Incidentally, okra also has quite a lot of other issues because if you don't handle it well and there are delays, it ends up looking like this. It's sharp, it's brittle, so it's less attractive to handle. And so now we talk about tomatoes. Now, given time, I'll move quickly onto this. We've done a lot of work on tomatoes, and I think I've said and voiced some of the issues. The imports are just too high. Of course, it's paste and the whole idea of canned, which does the big damage. But there's a lot of exposure of what is happening with the Chinese on this one. I've worked in France, so I speak French. This is a book, L'Empire de l'Or Rouge, which is literally the red gold. It's a very, very detailed book with an entire chapter on Ghana, and it's very, very important reading. We've got to really get this sorted out. And, the one I'm talking about with Burkina Faso, this is really serious. In Burkina Faso, they are doubling their efforts to get more of a market share with tomatoes across Africa. This is very important. Now, cassava, absolutely fantastic opportunity here, because cassava is also possibly an alternative to wheat in relation to starch. This is a fantastic opportunity. Did you know that cassava contributes 22% to Ghana's agricultural GDP? Over 70% of smallholder farmers in Ghana grow cassava. Over 90% of Ghana's land mass is suitable for growing cassava. This is really the secret weapon of the country. It could really help. And the other thing I found, and I've learned actually from the trip we did yesterday with Arma and Kwesi, is this, that the other thing that happens with cassava is there is this, basically, it's the ground pineapple which is latching onto the roots of the cassava, which in fact is of itself a fantastic crop. So it kills the cassava, but it's actually very good for bronchial and asthmatic attacks in people. And it's been around for a long time. So there's a real opportunity with cassava. On the one hand, we can get into herbal medicine. In the other, it's a thickener for stews and the rest of it that you all know very, very well from mothers and grandmothers cooking. But the other part to the story is if this could be the starch, this could be wanted by the cardboard industry worldwide, and this could be a boom time, a big boom opportunity. The other one that's really interesting, when we were looking at post-harvest losses, I found an obscure academic paper, and in some little footnote it said, tilapia really like rotting fruit and vegetables. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe part of the solution to post-harvest losses is to use the waste from post-harvest losses as something that tilapia would actually like. Now, tilapia, we only produce 40% in Ghana of the demand. And the demand for tilapia is going through the roof globally, because it's recognized that it's now the second most farmed fish on the planet. And it's more robust than some of the others. This is a really exciting Volta opportunity. The other one that I think is really exciting is the foraging snails, mushrooms, and the rest of it. Because these are high value items in the developed world. Mushrooms demand really high prices, and snails as well. So there are some big opportunities. Edible insects is another story where you've got, this is actually Legendary Foods in Ghana. They came over with the Canadians and they've settled now. This could be another game changer. For those of us in the developed world who are a bit squeamish about eating insects, I often say, well, why on earth do you feed your dog meat? Because that's very expensive. 14 kilos of grain, 1 kilo of meat. Why are you giving your dog that? Why don't, if the dog needs protein, feed the dog on insects? Why not? There's lots of opportunity. And I think actually the logistics of Ghana is best handled in this triangle from Takoradi to Kumasi, Kumasi to Tema, and along the coast. This triangle is where most of your demographic explosion will take place. It's also where you've got the forest that people would die for, quite frankly, in the foraging world. And you've also got soils that most of the staples will be grown here very easily. And this could then capitalize your whole approach to post-harvest losses. You're very close to some of the best universities that can do quite a lot of the research. And what that means is you're able to really attack the problem head on. So this triangle could be absolutely the way to go. I've not seen that anywhere actually, but I think this could be a catalyst. Because post-harvest losses at 40%, we've process mapped it. It's a food security crisis. It's denying the export added value, and it's denying even the raw materials. You've got the ability to really underpin this global search for seed and plant diversity. You've got the ability to improve your soil. You've got the ability to improve your seeds. At the moment, too many seeds are coming from the informal market. That has to be changed. Otherwise, you just can't work in the export markets. And so the business opportunity, and I really will try and pull this back, so my apologies, but this is the story of me catching the plane to come down here, and I came across this guy. Kwame Afmo had just come back from cooking a meal for Prince Charles in the UK. He sat next to me on the plane. We had a long chat. And this was his A Taste of Africa menu. All of the ingredients on this, all of them are actually from the area just southeast of Kumasi, the soups, the lot. And what he was saying was all of that, the way he described it to me, the ingredients were landscapes of Ghana. And I've been looking at a Peruvian chef just like this guy as part of the solution. And in Peru, which is a country I know, you have this beautiful coastline, then it goes into a fantastic mountainous region. And he has a menu which is called the Altitudes. So he has a menu which is based almost like sushi and Japanese at the coast, just like here. You could have a coast dish. You see crabs, you see all of the things there. So that's the opening one. And then you go all the way up to the snows of Kilimanjaro, which is where the bananas are, the stews are, the whole lot. Imagine, now, what am I now doing? I'm turning harvest into the brand of the country. Not just producing for volume, in which you've got a competitor called China, to name but one. But no, if you can get this story across, this is where the restaurants help you get that across. Their menus, vegetables, fruit, plants and herbs, translate into labs inside the universities. You've got a farm here. This could be part of that solution. Soil, seeds, produce, applications. This is where you position yourself as a global food player. Now, okay, I'll give you a firm example. This is Vietnam, which is a developing country. And they've done it with cocoa, where they've introduced sophisticated, it looks like kente cloth, doesn't it? Sophisticated marketing, where they've even regionalized the different types of cocoa pod. There's also the vegan market, which the Chinese haven't even bothered with yet because they don't think it's volume. 20 to 30% of global population might not be vegetarians, might not be vegans, but the majority of the meals they eat per week are actually vegetarian or vegan. Well, why don't we go for that market? Because then your stories can make that happen. Global vegan market in 2019 was 13.2 billion and growing like crazy. It's 24 billion, virtually doubles in size for 2026. You have asymmetrical supply chains. That's these bullet cart to Walmart problems, but they're not insurmountable. You have to add value. Here is an example for cotton. You grow it, you collate it, so that's the harvest bit. The green light means you're doing it in country, in the developing world. But to the right, this is where you add value. This is not here in Ghana, this is an illustration from India. But all of the bits to the right are done in the developed world. You could run the same thing with some of your products. And so until all of those are green in our chosen products, we've got a problem. And the Dangote are leading the way in Nigeria with sugar. And what they are saying is you get backward integration here, raw materials and so on. And green light means we do it at home. And then going forward, we could do. But then the platform, online marketplaces can do that job for you. And so under those circumstances, where some of your students are moving well with all of this, AI, machine learning, the rest of it is a direction of travel for a lot of students that I think is very exciting. So agribusiness digitalization is a massive arena. My last slide is an idea. I've called it Kuro 2050, a town. And in this town, in the middle of it, you've got a community center with a basketball court and a football, whatever. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a hotel and conference unit. You'll see an innovation hub. You might see a quarry. You see a reservoir. You see a processing factory. You see grain silos. You see a harvest area, which might not be for big volumes, but it could be to test drive different seeds. Now, in the UK, many universities have hotels in the middle. And Cranfield, one of the best business schools on the planet, has a university hotel and conference center. It consistently makes more money than any department on that university, consistently. And I really put it to you that in this area, above all, with your wonderful coastline, with your quite breathtaking views and small villages out and spread-eagled across this region, you have the place to be a research center. I really mean it. You have the ability to do this. And so, to sum up, and I do apologize for the timing, but I've been a little bit distracted in this particular presentation. So I've kind of given you a bit of a fragmented one. So I apologize for that. But let me hit home the 5 points I want to leave with you. Post-harvest losses at 40% is reducing capacity in this country, and it's supporting imports. Supporting imports. That's what it is. Climate, COVID, and conflict are complicating global agribusinesses, and you are not an exception. Imports are now running at 2.5 to 5 billion for fruits and vegetables into Ghana. This is clearly unsustainable, period. Service industry growth services domestic consumption, not sustainable growth, clear. And I believe that you've got a Ghana story that will sell your produce like nothing else. Just like these wonderful cloth images, the branding is needed. But a brand is only a promise. You've got to promise more with what you've got. And frankly, that is the road forward. And I think that triangle, that fertile crescent of this country, could drive it. And set yourself ready for the demography, which in that triangle will be huge. What is the point in dragging for the big urban spaces lots and lots of produce across big distances? Why not actually try to do more with vertical farms and farming in urban spaces? Innovation is needed. So again, thank you for this, shall we say, topsy-turvy presentation. But I do hope that what we haven't lost sight of is post-harvest losses is not just a technicality which I could easily have presented each one of the elements. No, it's a threat to your sustainability and growth, and it's a threat to youth unemployment in this country. And it needs head-on collision. No mincing words. You have been listening to the great Chinese sage, On Too Long. Thank you.